Okay, I have a wonderful panel. I have Christiane Vieck from Capgemini. Are we going to have chairs? Okay, let's do it with chairs. Okay, we have Chris Markus Kratz. We know him as CMK from AWS.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
And Michael Veit from ThoughtWorks. Okay, and I think we start when we all set. Is that okay?
Good. Think we can take a seat.
Yeah, let's go. Okay, let's introduce my guests, where they come from, what they do. Christiane, you're Vice President for Automotive at Capgemini. You have a passion for digital transformation, and we have this wonderful word in German called Steigeruch. It's really hard to translate. You could translate it in English with something like insider vibe,
Yes.
because you have a background in mechanical engineering.
That's true.
And how does this still open doors for you in the automotive industry?
I think open doors are always come with your mind or mindset. And so when I started working, I was in Atlanta working for CF. So I was responsible for looking at the Corvette. And so I was really in the plant. I worked at the car, and I love cars. So I hope my mindset opened doors, because what I do is what I like, and people hopefully see that.
Great. CMK, at AWS, you work a lot with IT infrastructure, cloud services, obviously. Digital transformation is a topic for your customers, maybe also for you personally. When I've been meeting you guys, hyperscalers in general, they always seem to be like laser focused on outcomes. The image gets sharper when you enter the room. It doesn't feel like that in the automotive industry. How is it to work with us?
That's a good question. First of all, it's totally exciting, right? We're so laser focused because we're so excited to innovate at Amazon and also with the industry. And you know, Amazon is all about customer obsession, and we work relentlessly backwards from the customers. So what we do, although we have that excitement and we do have a culture of innovation mindset, we need to learn from the industry. So we try to understand the language. We try to learn from you guys, from the tier ones, but also the OEMs, to actually speak the language, but most importantly, to understand how you're working today, and then to align to it. And then also to add upon, you know, how can we support in this transformation, if you call it a cultural transformation or even a digital transformation. So how is it? It's very exciting. And, you know, we learn a lot together, and that's the most important part, that you, you know, partner up, actually.
Great. Thank you. Michael Veit, Global Head of Technology, Software-Defined Vehicle. You joined ThoughtWorks in 2011. In 2011, I joined the automotive industry. My wife was pregnant the first time, and this seemed to be like a very solid move to provide for a child. You went to ThoughtWorks, and I remember ThoughtWorks back in the day. This was the most colorful, crazy bunch of software experts I've ever met. I still remember going to your offices, and I was totally amazed that it's even called an office. It was great. And nevertheless, we both ended up in this thing called automotive industry, software-defined vehicles. How is it for you? So,
yeah,
do you still carry that ThoughtWorks vibe?
Yeah, that's 100%. I mean, there's a reason why after 13 years I'm still with ThoughtWorks. And one small secret, I joined ThoughtWorks because I thought working for consultancy looks good on your CV. But for consultancy you work for 1 or 2 years, and somehow I still ended up here. But I think, I mean, I started obviously with the cloud and the web development. I did lots of different domains and projects, but I think about 7-8 years ago, that was the first time I did a project for embedded automotive development. And for me as a developer, it's so much more rewarding if somebody in Berlin presses enter in a terminal and then Stuttgart rolls a window down, right? That's to me just much more rewarding than building APIs for payment services. And I mean, also there's the need there, right? There's the need for bringing the software craft to the automotive industry. And to be honest, I always say to my wife, like, I think there's stuff for me to do for the next 10 years. Let's see if I can pull through for the next 10 years.
Yes. I can relate to that. So a lot of work, I think, in software and IT, your day's work is just another symbol on a screen, right? And if you work in the automotive industry, we move physical things. We make sure they're safe. We make sure they perform. It can be really rewarding if we do our job right? But let's talk about, there's a public perception that, especially the established players in automotive, that we don't get something about how to build great software products. I think there's to one extent, this is just misunderstood, because there are like several 100 million lines of code running safely on roads for decades now. And compared to the number of vehicles, the number of incidents really caused by flawed software is really, really low. So to some extent, I think they understand what they do. But on the other hand, especially if we look at the new players who can do software often really, really well and developed it to a level that it's a feature of the product that customers are really passionate about, and they tweet about it, they blog about it, how great the newest feature is, and they're excited. And we haven't reached that level of competence to really deliver that everywhere. And there's probably some reasons, and all of you look at our industry from different angles. If you can name like one moment from your personal history where you worked with us guys, and you thought, why do we do it like that? We know that there are like things that we could do better. What would that be? What kind of situation pops up your mind?
I can start. So 1 sentence before, I think what we have to understand is that building software for cars has been optimized for a very different problem for decades. And this bleeds into the processes, the capabilities, the people, the mindset, because it had to be right first time around. Because changing the software once the car is out, that costs a lot. And now if you boil it down from a software perspective, SDV into one thing, it's software is never done. That means you have to be incremental and iterative. And I think that then implicates lots of things, but just to name one, I think the processes I observe a lot what people call Taylorism based. So you take the V model and then you say, and now I have a requirements team and a design team and the implementation team and then the testers and the system testers. And I guess in every other domain I work with, the idea of cross-functional teams was much more prominent. And I think while this might not be 100% true to gather all the capabilities in one team, people like 100% underestimate the cost of handovers and the delays. And also they forget the more capabilities you can put into functional teams, the more it's fun, but it's also you can put more responsibility on the team. I observed so many times in the automotive industry, everybody said we are done. Yeah, but it was not working.
Yeah. Michael, I totally agree with what you just said, but to add on it from a different angle, also what I said in the beginning. For me, a pivotal moment was when, Chris Salzman was just on stage and we collaborate very closely with BMW in multiple areas together, where we signed up to solve actually industry problems on a horizontal base that every OEM has to face. And where we can develop platforms that also, the broader auto industry could use, and then the OEMs could put their differentiating part on top and integrate tier ones and integrate the software guys. So one pivotal moment for me was actually when we were working together in the driving dynamics space with BMW, where, in the phase where this project was being set up, and we discussed, with BMW and all the other vendors on how this could be done in the cloud at scale. And then it became pretty clear, and this is a mindset change that we see, and I'm excited about this, where Nikolai Martin from BMW said at that time, that we actually look for partners. We don't look for suppliers. Mm-hmm. That is a very, very important thing, because solving those industry challenges, you name them, right? If there's autonomous driving, if there's in-car experience, if there's virtual ECU testing or whatever, every OEM has to do this, right? But in order to do this, you need partnerships. You need partnerships on the GSI space for, where the software workbenches, the operating is and stuff like that. You need the hyperscalers with the expertise on running something globally at scale. You need the software developers, you need the OEMs, you need all of the, you name it, the ETAs, the Harmans, the Bosch, everyone who's in the car to actually collaborate together as partners, right? Not losing, again, what Chris said, not giving away your IP or your software, but collaborate as partners and build open APIs to work together, and the willingness to work together to solve that. So I think the situation we're seeing right now, which is also hitting the German industry in that perspective, actually it's for us a wake-up call that we should get together and collaborate more as partners. One start is to be at a conference like this, but also to get the things going, in the back rooms on doing the work.
Mm-hmm. I would add the power play. Yeah, if you look at what you just said, you said then the window goes down and I steer it from Berlin, and you like that, yeah. And you said about the V model, how it's shaped, yeah. So if we look in the departments of our OEMs, and I think there are most of it in the same way organized, and the governance has been since a long time in the same way. And I have been responsible for let's say, the infotainment module, for a piece of it. So I have been very proud, and I controlled hardware, I controlled software, I controlled the integration. And today I give it to a feature team which wants to deploy it then, yeah? And then we break the V model, and I think there we cannot forget people. People really, if they drive in the car, and I did it myself 2 weeks ago, we drove in the car and I could name the person of the car who did that module. And when I had different modules, and BMW is doing it differently, they are looking at the complete user guidance if it comes to infotainment, but most of the other OEMs, I could name why this feature can be used like it's used and another feature is used in another way. I could put a name on it, and that made you proud. And we need somehow to really come to a point where people feel responsible, and where they can see what they have been doing, and where they take with the collaboration their part and their personal responsibility in the new way of working.
That's really, really interesting. I remember, I think it was one of Jeff Bezos' principles about owning your dependencies. When I read that the first time, I still remember that I am working in a totally different culture.
Well, you own it, you run it. I mean, This is how, the micro, all of Amazon is a bunch of microservices, right? And I was just funnily last night talking about this. So when teams within Amazon build a piece of software, a microservice, actually you need to think very, very early. And these are cross-functional teams, right? Working together. We call them the 2 pizza teams. At least 4 people, but maximum 15 people, right? But what they need to think about very, very early when they build the feature or the software is about automation. Because the last thing that you don't want to, is like wake up at night, that your software isn't working. So they have to think about, for sure, security is job zero, but like automation, they have to build it in from the beginning. That's a totally different mindset. So end-to-end responsibility, what you just said, that's the most important part in the integration.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the automotive culture used to be quite hierarchical, Tayloristically work split, functional responsibilities, and in the end, you always somehow make it in a task force that it runs eventually. And this really solves or creates strong bonds between people and creates power structures over time. And what has worked for you, maybe in other contexts, to break up such a culture? Because it's a culture where people remember the hardest and best times. This has worked in the past. During really rough phases of your career, you can say about it what you want from the outside, but usually they all have a memory. Eventually they delivered a good product. And the bonds of the organizations are built like that. And how would you start, or what would you recommend to start, how to break that up?
Yeah, I mean, you phrased it in a very positive way, and I like that you phrased it that way. But you also have to be aware that in some companies you earn your shoulder claps. Mm-hmm. You know, running a task force, it's saving the SOP, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not how it's going to work. If you want to push out software to cars every 6 weeks, you can't do that. And I think a lot of times I see, when I look at the head of software engineering, if I look at really the top management of automotive companies, I think it makes sense what they are saying, right? And if I work, you know, on projects, I have lots of people who are very talented, very eager to change things. And then you got 5 layers of hierarchy in the middle. And I think with the structures I see a lot, there's no intrinsic motivation to risk something, to change something. Let's write the next generation in Rust, right? Mm-hmm. Why would I do that? Mm-hmm. And I guess then it's all about describing what good looks like, describing how we measure progress, and make it then tangible also for middle management to move into the right direction. If a lot of companies say, oh, we want to think more like a software company, what does it mean, right? And then, okay, let's say you want to reduce time to market. Where are you right now? From idea to in production? 6 years. Okay, then let everyone who comes up with a plan for the next program say how they got to reduce those 6 years. Mm-hmm. So translate the strategy where you want to be into something more tangible and measure people by it. I've said so many times on the ground with teams, and they were like, why would we do your agile stuff? We will deliver at SOP. Why would we change? Mm-hmm. Right? So you need to create this motivation. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
You can only prove it if you actually do it and put it in action. So the you know, what we see from the projects we're doing or what we develop together with OEMs is always, you know, and by the way, some OEMs, you know, ask us to work with them like you are, also to change the culture in their teams, you know, to use it as an example, as a lighthouse. You really see a big difference if the leadership within those silos and within this organization empowers their people. And if they really empower them to take decisions and to move fast, to test and to fail, that's totally fine. But that is something, you know, then to break up the waterfall model, right, and to work in an agile mode. And if you empower the people to do this, then you unlock a lot, right? If you give them the responsibility to do it, to also fix interfaces, to fix APIs that they before couldn't even touch or weren't allowed to touch in that sense.
Okay, I want to talk about one thing that seems to be working for the automotive industry. So you have the existing structures that to some extent fail maybe holistically the industry, but they didn't fail the individual people in power. They know who they can trust. They know when everything was burning, you can call to take out the coals, as we say, coals out of the fire, as we say in German. And I think a lot of complex steering models involve trusting the people first to a big extent. But how can we in a phase of transformation come to a point where this is replaced maybe by other ways to do things together, like in the sense of you have a very complex integration environment, but you defaulted it's green. And if it's not green, this is really something extraordinary, and everyone tries to fix this as fast as possible. and then you do as a company many small changes, and you can trust that if your overall state of integration is green, you're probably going to make it. You don't know the timeline, but you're not going to make it because you trusted the wrong people, or everything turns out to be a great mess. And how can we... So I see a lot of improvements at OEMs and also tier ones to go maybe from 8-week increments to maybe weekly or even daily sometimes, but often in local islands. How can we convince even more that this is the right way, and what can we give them as guidance to say, hey, it's worth it. Go from weekly to daily and go even from there to continuously green. What has worked for you? Do we need other leaders, or can we convince the existing leadership?
I would believe that you should really look at infrastructure and make sure that you can work with the same tool chain and the same infrastructure together. And the question before, like the power play in the governance, if you believe that if you head up 200 people, you're important, that should change. You're important if you really get deployed in a time frame that fits the market. And if you change this responsibility from people to content, and then you get the partner on board to deliver it together. Yeah, and establish the base, the fundament for it. That's why we do have cloud providers like AWS. Yeah, and if you have then the possibility to work together, and you are committed to deploy what you promised, then this should be a game changer.
You mentioned they look for partners.
Well,
To some of the tier ones and tier twos, this sounds like a trap. It didn't feel like partnering in the past for a very long time. We understand why. It was maybe also a model to really force you deliver on time, and if you didn't, really you messed up production lines and everything. It was focused on this. And now partnering seems like, for some in the industry, like crazy talk. Like, I will be responsible eventually, and this is just nice words. But I still believe this is happening, this is possible, and this is the best model to really to value generation together maybe in a club of parties who know one thing that's required really, really well. Can you give me maybe examples from experience where you have worked in or seen these kinds of partnerships where we are working automotive industry, new partners together, and how this feels and looks?
I mean, the example that I mentioned earlier was like to be very specific on, where we partner up actually with BMW, with Qualcomm, and with Capgemini to actually develop, as I said, a horizontal platform and workbench for autonomous driving to train algorithms and to build the algorithms, because it's an industry problem to do this at scale, right? And where this worked for the first time, I mean, the Qualcomm colleagues, they come from the hardware space. They build hardware, and they had to learn how to actually deploy their hardware in the cloud, the ECUs, to enable also the virtual ECU testing globally at scale, also in China, which in countries that are really regulated, like China, for instance, right, which is also a big challenge. But this has worked out because everyone came together, which has a common vision and a common mindset that they want to accomplish. And everyone is working then towards a common goal and the SOP to make it happen. And you said it sounds like a trap to some partners, right? Partnership usually meant, hey, you build it for me, and if it doesn't work, you're out of the game, yeah. And in the meantime, I will negotiate prices with you that go below your margin, right? I think that mindset is changing because it will not work. Right, you need the expertise. There are great companies out there in specific domains. They all have the expertise. We should leverage that. And you should have, when you talk about partnership, is that both or all of them, it could be a 3, 4-way or 2-way partnership, that everyone has the same skin in the game. And just like what I said, when you have the same vision and the same goal, then you strive to accomplish that. And in the past, it has been different when you talk from OEM to like a supplier. The supplier was just, providing the basis, and you could negotiate prices, all over the place. That didn't work. It's not, I would say that worked, but it's not, what we need in the software space and digital space going forward.
And partner sounds so shiny, right? But for some people, partner means I get money from you, right? Or I get stuff from you for cheap, right? And I think when we really speak about partners creating software for cars, we have to fix it on a more higher level in the hierarchy. I was at a supplier forum this year, and the head of software says, and we collaborate all with each other, all the partners. And in the afternoon, procurement comes and says, we're going to do the same thing we did the last 30 years, right? And that's true for legal, that's true for QA, and so on and so on. So if you want to change the collaboration, you have to change it in all cross functions as well. And on the team level, I find it a bit easier to achieve things. I was on a project with an SDS provider, an OEM, a service provider. I could drag the people into the same room. I could just say, no, we're going to build a virtual integration environment. I can at least try, right? Because usually partners integrate binaries on a prototype car. That's late. That's expensive, right? We need to change that. But at those, we always say, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. So to some extent, on some influence level, I can just do the right thing, but I can't fix it entirely.
There's one thing we always talk about, SOP, start of production. We might change that to start of product. And then we have the real responsibility, and we don't go away if the car has been launched. That's not SDB.
Yes, fully agree. So in the same sense, and at an event we had a Chinese CEO on stage, and he said the one thing that the German automakers don't get is when they deliver the car to the customer, this is basically the end of the customer journey. For us, it's a start. And if we look technologically at how we build these cars, we have like ECUs utilized to 97%. It's a work of art. It's doing like critical safety. It's stable latencies in the very low range, but it's stuffed. It's really, really stuffed, and it works. And we have, I think, as you said, built a set of technologies built for SOP and like very one-time, two-time type of integration, and then we ship it out of the door. We probably have to change how we build these things. Do you have a strong conviction? What would be the highest return of invest if we really change that technologically?
Well, my thought is, or that's not my thought, but our thinking here there is, and I think the industry will agree. I mean, like you said it well, when a car hits the road, actually the customer journey just is beginning, right?
Yes.
And the whole journey is beginning. Actually, we have to, the differentiating for sure hardware platform and software that an OEM does, it needs to be built in that way that it can be sustained over years, because literally you don't want to exchange your car after 2 or 3 years because the updates don't work anymore, like your smartphone or whatever, or it gets slower. I mean, let's think about that. If it would get slower, that would be funny. But you actually have to think about how you also, from a hardware perspective, equip the smartphone on wheels in such a way that it could support, the future, whatever is coming. I mean, it wouldn't be a tech conference if we don't bring in the word Gen AI now in this, right? So I bring it in. So think about Gen AI. We need to think about already today on how small language models will look like and how the ECU must be sized and set up. It's interesting that we talk about hardware again in the software-defined space, but we have to think about how do we size that and how do we build this, that actually in a few years from now, when we actually have Gen AI at play and have the cars feeding into small language models and large language models, it still has to work. So we have to think about that together in the industry. So I think this is the most crucial part to to also what you said, the customer journey is just beginning, because it will be a cycle. The car will learn about you as a person, the car will learn about users patterns, will actually feed this into engineering at the OEM, that they learn about the behaviors, and they could actually hopefully build functions and services in days to get it out to the market, to create a totally new experience for you as a customer. That's when really the customer journey starts.
And I think one thing that I have to add, as you said, I have this Stahlgeruch. I love cars. I'm not talking about an iPhone on vehicle. Sorry. For me, this needs still to be a car. And I do not want that to change. And I think there we have a strong point here in Germany. And we should really consider to not forget that. Yeah? So I would never buy a Volvo with this one screen. I love the infotainment I have with my car. I love the personality that my car has. So please, don't forget that.
I don't disagree with your opinion, but I think I think that's a very dangerous tactic, right? Because the product as a car is changing. As you described earlier, it's a difference between selling a product and owning the mobility of a customer. And with the combustion engine go away, people lose the emotional attachment to the car, right? And EVs are more sterile. And yes, I agree with you. A 19-inch screen with one button is more sterile. So how do you differentiate when the car is shifting from this nice fountain pen, the Mont Blanc, to more of a biro, like a pen, right? And I think if I would be the head of software, I would invest only in time to market of software features, and time to market in the sense of we have the V model and everybody's trying to execute the V model faster, but the gap between those things, the ice cream cone, how do you get from it's deployed to a customer to I have the next idea I want to ship? And I guess that's where what people call the digital native OEMs are right now really good at. And if I own a Li motor and I'm part of the beta group, I get an update from my infotainment every week. And yes, it's broken sometimes.
But this shouldn't hinder I'm completely agreeing what you're saying, but I think it can still be a car and you don't need an iPhone on wheels, yeah? But there is no arguing that both should be valid.
Yeah, I agree. I had this metaphor as well. It sometimes does work in some cases. But yeah, find a way to differentiate. It's not the sound of the engine anymore. It's not going to be, I'm sorry.
Well, the branding of the whatever the brand wants to create in terms of the driving experience, I think that the driving experience will still be different, but every OEM has to define how that looks like in the digital, I would say, area. It's like it should be a difference when you get into a Volvo or when you get into a BMW or when you even drive a Porsche, right? It should be a different driving experience, not just from a digital perspective. You should be in an ecosystem or an ecosystem that you like as a Porsche driver or, as a BMW driver, but also how the driving dynamics look like. I mean, I know that the OEMs really think about that thoroughly on how they actually transport the combustion engine driving experience to even the autonomous driving space, and you can actually already see it somehow today. I actually don't like when the car really in German you say mich bevormundet, and brakes when the sign comes in that it's just 100 and I've been going 150. But actually you see a difference between the OEMs, how the braking works and how aggressive the braking works, and also how the acceleration works. So you see the difference, and I think that will be something really, really interesting, how the OEMs figure this out, hopefully together with us as partners, how to do this in the digital space, but that we still have the differentiation. So I agree with you.
And it was certainly hard for me to stay in the moderator role, because I have also strong emotions about what a car can be for you. But we're running out of time, and I have to thank you for a great discussion so far. Let's talk about the one thing as a takeaway, because OEMs are really changing. Products are already getting better. We have what you said, for example, purchasing at the table in really deep early tech discussions. They're trying to learn what is important for my company. What are they offering actually? And there's a lot of things changing right now. And so you can see the willingness to really develop further is there. And from your background, your experience, if there's one thing you can give us as a takeaway today, what really to focus on, what would it be? Or what to be hopeful about, to focus on, whatever. What's your takeaway for today?
I would completely agree with what we said before. So have the responsibility for what you do and make sure that you are able to deploy it. Take the control, take the responsibility of what you produce from the start of getting the idea, the feature development, the integration, and then the deployment. Let the teams be really in the middle of it.
As Germans, we always had a brand of, quality over a long time and a good quality. And I think that the market notion that we're seeing in the, globally at the moment, and the pressures that are being put on the OEMs, I think that's a chance. That's a chance for us as Germany, as German engineers, and we have great people, we have really skilled people to actually change the mindset and finally get going as partners and to figure this out. And I think then, what customers want, even in the digital space, over time, they want quality. They want a good experience and a good customer experience. And I think that's what we can do.
Yes.
Oh, I want to share something I learned 2 weeks ago when a Swedish OEM said to me, developers who don't write code are not developers, right? and sorry, I think there's more to it, right? Because I think there's been grown roles, processes, and capabilities. Yes, you do need people that don't write code, but have a look how many people contribute to your software-defined vehicle by writing software.
Wonderful last words. Thank you very much. We're all going to be here. You can meet us. You can discuss with us. I think we have opened a lot of things that we can continue on later with you guys. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Before you guys leave the stage, we still will have some time for Q&A. So
oh, perfect.
If you're still willing to discuss with us, that would be awesome. So do we have any questions online or in the room? Online, I don't see any, but I see one in the room. Maybe you can hand over mic.
Hi, my name is Chris Seiler from Mercedes. You mentioned the hierarchy challenge of the OEMs. What would you propose if a guy like me, from the bottom of the hierarchy, how can he reach how can we proceed, or how can we overcome this virtual fence of this hierarchy in order to bring innovations into our organizations? Do you have any kind of ideas how to do that?
Yeah, so
Michael.
Brutally honest, there's only that much I think you can do. I think you can always convince your boss. You might get a date with your boss's boss and can convince them. Like I said before, don't ask for permission. That's a risk for a lot of people they don't want to take, but it needs people like this. But to be also very honest, I think the troublemakers I've seen at the big OEMs, they got worn out. They left after 4 or 5 years. So therefore, I think I don't have a silver bullet for that. I can't just make 30 years of development of an organization go away.
Maybe I have a more positive one.
I'm so glad that you're with me here.
No, something that really works. So, especially as an expert, you have an eye. Who of your directors and up gets it more than others? And who would you believe, if you really extrapolate the decision making, who's from an outcome perspective going to be successful and who not? And go there. Change departments, change roles, and then support these people at best as you can. And I think this is the best you can do.
Also, can I add one more just to add also something positive? It's always this is saying, wer abliefert hat recht, who delivers is right, right? So find the constraints, the boundaries you have, and just deliver excellent stuff in the realm you can, then people will listen to you. Yeah.
There's another question over there.
Is it on? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thomas from Apex AI. Chris, good question. I would add hierarchy is also looking into liability, and this is a major issue, especially when it comes to safety. And there are many things a developer just can't overlook, and especially integration. Classically, use the tier 1 to integrate, to take over the liability. What do you see will be a good recipe in practice to overcome this situation that someone has to take over the liability? Because many OEMs, they just don't want.
So I would answer, if you really virtualize to a high extent from the beginning and you shift left, then the liability gets to lose its importance. And if you then build the golden image, then you can really, if you had the shift left, you can start very early to think about integration issues and about the liability. That would be my answer.
It's a tough one. It's a really tough one. But what I can say is, so I think I fully agree with you. We haven't automated all we can in the sense of really making sure our system's safe by ceremony, that we have like a meeting with process heads and they give a formal signature, and you can do that every 2 or every 4 weeks. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement. But eventually, that's not sufficient. You cannot automate everything. And this is something that I had to learn as a developer to mature the value of processes. And I think you need a good separation of concerns in your architecture, you need to partition your system, and there where it really matters, a mature, lean process that tries to do the right thing can really be something meaningful that you actually accept as a developer because you understand, hey, this is really saving all of our bottoms eventually, and we do this for a reason, and there's a place for that in automotive development.
I think there is one last question.
Thank you very much. Frederick Scott from Novatec. I have a question for Mr. Kratz. Thank you for your intro. When we see the headline of the panel, it states why the automotive industry struggles with software and digitalization. So in your intro, you stated we want to learn from each other. We want to learn from the OEMs and the tier 1s, and we have to align or adapt. So do you take this as a static fact, or don't you even think that maybe there should be initiatives to turn that fact around and that OEMs have to learn from tech companies maybe?
Yes.
It's a very interesting statement that you're making. My intro was, that I said we would never ever say that we know it better, right, in the auto industry, because, we would never claim that we have the understanding that you guys or the tier 1s and OEMs have. I mentioned more that we try to understand on how this works and that we can work with you. Now I come to the next point. Actually, yes. The OEMs are working with us exactly to understand on what they could do better and in a different way. So what I said earlier, the ways of working and how we do things, right? To actually start off that cultural and organizational processes and transformation. Yes, there are OEMs starting and also tier 1s starting to ask more of an opinion from us and how we have an outside-in perspective. That was not the case a few years ago, right? But this one is changing, and it's a good one, actually. It's also delicate in how you answer those things because, again, I would say we don't have the holy grail as well. We know how we do it. We know how we build software and operate software at scale. But, for the auto industry, it's a totally different game. So we have to learn this together. But for sure, we are more than open to offer our opinion. And to the colleague from Mercedes-Benz, one offer I could make, that's how some OEMs even do it. They utilize their partners to make something transparent, which doesn't work. And to make it, because we can transport it to the top leadership and give our honest opinion if there's an open ear and an open mindset to do so. So we're more than happy to do this because in the end, we all together as partners want to be successful in a win-win situation. Thanks for the question.
All right, coming to an end. Thanks, guys, for this session. A small present from ETAS. Thanks for being with us today. See you again next time. And a round of applause.